Hello everyone, my name is Trevor, I go by TheMrTrails, welcome to the channel. Allow me to get the elephant out of the room right away. Yes, I'm a lobster. I've been out in the sun for like the past week or so, and I'm a bit more red on camera than I actually am right now, but I am a lobster. So today's video, we're going to go over the state of Dauntless on Reddit that launched today. We're going to do a really quick one, and we are also going to do this as a sort of test of my new settings on the OBS. Hopefully everything's good now. I swapped from Streamlabs OBS to OBS Studio, and I put some filters. I even adjusted some of the filters on the mic, so hopefully there's no mic popping in this video. If this sort of stuff doesn't work here, then I'm just going to be sort of at a loss as to why my mic just has issues on these programs as opposed to Audacity. But enough of this nonsense, let's go ahead and get into this state of Dauntless on Reddit. And really, they come right out of the gate here with something pretty controversial. They're talking about the seasonal abilities here, and right away, the Faction of the Past and the Faction of the Future will be removed from the Slayer's Path on July 8th and not going to be available in any way. Right off the bat here, I want to address and talk about one of the main issues that people that I've talked to have with Dauntless right now is just the lack of a direction, a sense of what they want in the game. And I haven't read this all the way through yet, and I will read what they have to say about it, but, we spent, hours and hours playing the game to max out these abilities. They spent hours and hours making these abilities into the game. Like, what this basically is just a massive lack of progress to do anything productive. There have been bugs that have been in the game for basically a year or more at this point, and they just haven't fixed them in favor of making things like this stuff. But now they just decide, oh, we're just gonna scrap it in the next couple of weeks. Like, I would have thought they would have at least kept these abilities available in some way on like the paradox breaks. Maybe you go to a kiosk or something to get these Slayer's paths up at the paradox breaks. I don't know. As far as I'm aware, I haven't read this, but Primal and Elder Behemoths, I believe, are still going to be in the game. It's just our abilities against them are going to be just gone. Because you got to factor in that Perfect Strike and the Drone weren't the only things that we were gaining from these. All right, but let's go ahead and read what they have to say about it. Wanted to see what seasonal abilities would feel like in Dauntless. The goal was to provide a fun progression reward the infinite radius season itself. They wanted to explore unique abilities without altering the balance of Dauntless forever. Didn't they already do that with Critpot? We learned these abilities shouldn't negate powers of the new behemoths. We don't want the abilities to disable what makes the new encounters unique, but rather we want the abilities to add to them. Okay, so the drone's ability, it actually worked against the design of the Elder Behemoth shields. The AoE damage was negated. What they meant by that was that the drone would activate the shields instead of actually hitting the behemoth. Another lesson we learned was to communicate the seasonal ability timeline early. Ideally, the communication around the limited availability of these abilities should be in advance. Yeah, not like 2 weeks in advance, right? So I believe there was some communication about this ability not going to be everywhere in escalations and the hunting grounds forever, but there wasn't any communication that this just wouldn't exist after the end of the season. The Heroes of Ostia season will not have any seasonal abilities. This doesn't mean they won't do it again, but they will focus solely on Omnicells. As for Perfect Strike and Friend Forever, we're currently taking our favorite parts and asking ourselves if they can be their own Omnicell. See, one thing this means is that if they become their own Omnicell, then they are going to be in the Dauntless trial scene as where they weren't before, so there's going to have to be some balancing around trials specifically. They are saying that we shouldn't be surprised if the abilities do return in some form or another. Then they're just asking for feedback about the abilities themselves, not necessarily the decision to remove these abilities. Scroll through the comments here, and I think one of the weird things here is that, we have the powers are good, but the fights weren't. And they said we missed the mark a bit with Elder and Primals, but that's the thing staying in the game. At least that's what I can see as far as, the previous state of Dauntless Reddit. It seems like they are staying in the game. They didn't say anywhere that they're being removed. Somebody linked to another post here 21 days ago that there was going to be an in-game message that saying that these were going to go away, but it was 21 days ago, and we are just now getting news of these abilities are going to be removed. So before these abilities even released, they did release them with the statement seasonal ability which, does imply that they were going to go away, just like the Granny's Heartbreaker tonic went away after the Terra escalation season. But the difference here is that that was broadcasted, that it was going away. As soon as they released it, you knew that it was going to go away at some point. But the way you see this, the Slayer's Path upgrades that we got here were basically our Radiant escalation talent tree, if you will. Which is why I was under the assumption that these would at the very least be available on the Paradox breaks, since you are going to be still able to fight the Chronivore after this. So it's basically you unlocked the escalation talent trees to fight the escalation bosses with those bonus abilities forever, but unlocking these abilities throughout an entire season, you don't get to use those against the Chronivore. I'm going to say it, the complete removal of these abilities instead of just some sort of limitation on where you get to use these abilities, even if it is only for a little while, is pretty hard to actually take the developer's side on this. So right now they're trying to figure out what they want to do with these abilities, and they're almost certainly saying that they are going to be in the game again at some point, but they should have just had a plan for these abilities from the beginning to have them in the game for a long time. So again, they spent a long time making these abilities. We spent a long time killing hundreds of behemoths to unlock these abilities to their full potential. There should have been some effort to keep these abilities in the game in some capacity. And at this point, it's just like half of these so far, and the past 3 pretty much, are just apologies for things that they did design-wise. Apologies for the Elders and Primal Behemoths, apologies for the seasonal abilities, apologies for the release schedule of the Hunting Grounds portals. I think at this point, it is, pretty much impossible to ignore the lack of direction arguments, pick a direction and go with it, not just flip-flop on what you actually want to do. And you guys know me, I try to focus more on the positive side of things that the developers are doing, and it makes me playing the game more appealing, it makes my interaction with the community members more appealing. And it's kind of hard to be positive in this situation where, their previous talk about the design flaws of the Elders and Primal Behemoths, the things that people were actually complaining about in the game, staying in the game, and they're just going to tweak those a bit, versus the things that people weren't complaining about at all, just being straight up removed without having stake in the game anywhere at all. I come from a Fortnite background before I started playing Dauntless consistently again. Fortnite, its development team and the community have some issues, like starting in chapter 2, they had communication issues. There was no sort of patch notes or any communication from the developers whatsoever. And right now, the Fortnite community and the developers have a pretty healthy relationship. I've seen plenty of people say that Season 7, Chapter 2 is the best season of Fortnite that they've ever played. But I'm still fairly certain that there's a general lack of communication from the Fortnite developers and their community. But, even with all the communication that we have between the Dauntless developers and the Dauntless community, there are still a lot of decisions being made that are leaving the Dauntless community feeling like the developers are out of touch with what players of the game actually want. So that's about going to do it for today's video, guys. This was a bit more of a negative video. Leave me a positive future of Dauntless comment that you actually feel like is a positive thing going forward. Thank you guys for watching. Consider leaving a like on the video. If you are here early, I will very likely be on Twitch right now. And if you've enjoyed Dauntless and are not subscribed already, consider subscribing to the channel. I post Dauntless content here every week. I've been Trevor. I go by the Mr. Trails. Catch you guys next time.